Have you ever stopped to think why some people seem completely free while everyone else feels trapped? And I'm not talking about money, not exactly, because I'm talking about something deeper, something almost invisible, something that most people never even realize exists. Because if you look closely, the rarest people in the world are not the richest. They're the ones who live life on their own terms, without constant anxiety, without the need for validation, without that silent desperation to fit in, just control. And here's the uncomfortable truth: very few people can live like this. And the real question is why? Because it requires something most people will never develop. And today you're going to understand exactly what that is. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision purely because you wanted to? Not because your family expected it, not because society rewards it, not because you were afraid of missing out, but because it was truly yours. Because if you really think about it, most people don't even know what they want. They've been conditioned, programmed since childhood to follow a script. Go to school, get good grades, get a stable job, follow the path, and if you don't, you feel like you're doing something wrong. But the people who live differently, they broke that script, and that's where everything begins to change. Because the first trait of people who can live like this is simple but extremely rare. They think independently, and even though that sounds obvious, it's not, because independent thinking means questioning everything, even things that seem normal, especially things that seem normal. Because normal doesn't mean right, it just means common, and common leads to average thinking, average decisions, average results. But these people pause, they observe, they ask themselves why they're doing what they're doing, who told them that this is actually what they want, or just what they were told to want. And most people never ask these questions because it's uncomfortable, because it creates uncertainty, and because it forces them to take responsibility. And that's the second thing most people avoid: real responsibility, not the surface level kind, but full ownership of their life. No blaming the parents, no blaming the system. Because once you truly accept responsibility, you lose all excuses, and that's terrifying, but it's also where freedom begins. Because if everything is your fault, then everything is also in your control, and the same idea that scares most people is the exact thing that empowers the rare few, which is exactly why so few people can live like this, because most people would rather feel comfortable than powerful. If you go even deeper, you'll notice another pattern. These people are completely okay with being misunderstood. And that is something incredibly rare, because most people live in constant fear of judgment, filtering everything they say, everything they wear, everything they post, and everything they pursue based on how others might react. But the people who live freely have let go of that need, not completely because they're still human, but enough to not let it control their lives, because they understand that no matter what you do, people will judge you anyway. So the only logical choice is to live a life that is actually yours. And this is exactly where most people hesitate, because being misunderstood comes with a price. It brings loneliness, doubt, criticism, and sometimes even rejection from people you thought would support you. But on the other side of that rejection is something most people never reach, which is real alignment, real connection, and real peace. Because you're no longer pretending, and pretending is exhausting. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that you are playing different roles in different areas of your life, acting one way at work, another with friends, another online, and another with family, constantly adjusting who you are just to fit in and avoid conflict. But that's not freedom, that's performance, and performance eventually breaks you. The rare ones understand this early, and they choose authenticity over approval, even when it costs them, especially when it costs them, because they know that short-term discomfort leads to long-term freedom, while short-term comfort leads to long-term regret, and that awareness alone separates them from everyone else, because they are willing to go through temporary pain in exchange for permanent growth, while most people do the opposite without even realizing it. Now, here's where things become even more interesting. These people don't chase everything. They are highly selective with their time, their energy, and their attention, because they understand that your life is simply the sum of what you say yes to, and most people say yes to everything, to opportunities they don't care about, to relationships that drain them, and to habits that weaken them, all because they don't want to miss out. But the rare ones are not afraid of missing out. They are afraid of wasting their life, and that difference changes everything. They say no far more often than they say yes, and every no protects their focus, their peace, and their direction. And this is a different kind of discipline, not just waking up early or working hard, but emotional discipline, the ability to say no even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it disappoints others, and even when it makes you look different. And that is why so few people can actually do it, because it requires clarity, and clarity requires silence. And silence is something most people avoid because it forces you to face yourself, which is why when most people are alone, they immediately reach for their phone, they distract themselves, they escape, because silence exposes everything, your thoughts, your fears, your doubts. But the people who live like this lean into it. They use that silence to reflect, to build themselves, to understand themselves. And over time, they become someone that most people don't even recognize, not because they changed randomly, but because they evolved intentionally. So let me ask you something else. What are you avoiding right now? What is that thing you keep delaying? That decision you keep postponing? That truth you don't want to admit? Because that right there is the gap between who you are and who you could be. And the rare ones close that gap relentlessly, not perfectly, but consistently, taking action even when it's uncomfortable, moving forward even when they're uncertain, committing even when others hesitate, and slowly their life begins to look completely different. Not overnight, but inevitably, because direction matters more than speed, and most people are moving fast in the wrong direction, staying busy, stressed, and overwhelmed, but not actually progressing, while the rare ones slow down first and then move with precision, making every decision aligned and every step intentional, and over time, that compounds into a completely different life. But here's something most people won't tell you. Living like this is not easy. In fact, it's harder, especially in the beginning, because you will question yourself, you will doubt your path, and you will feel like you're falling behind while everyone else seems ahead. But that's just an illusion, because most people are not ahead. They are simply following a path that looks safe, looks accepted, and looks normal, but deep down they are not fulfilled. And fulfillment is the real goal, not just success, not just money, not just status, because you can have all of that and still feel empty, and you've seen it before, people who made it but still feel lost, still feel disconnected, still feel trapped, and the reason is simple. They built a life based on external expectations instead of internal truth, and the rare ones avoid that trap by defining success for themselves, not based on what looks impressive, but based on what actually feels right. And when you reach that point, everything changes, because now you are not chasing someone else's dream, you are building your own, and that creates a different kind of energy, a different kind of motivation, something that is not forced but natural, something that is aligned. And when you are aligned, you don't need constant motivation, you have direction, and direction is far more powerful. So if very few people can live like this, what does that mean for you? It means you have a choice. You can stay where it's comfortable, or you can step into something rare, something difficult, something real, because at the end of the day, this is not about being better than others, it's about being true to yourself. And that is a completely different game, a deeper game that most people never even realize exists. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, you start noticing patterns, behaviors, conditioning, and you start asking better questions, stronger questions, questions that actually lead to change, and that is where your life begins to shift, not because of luck or timing, but because of awareness combined with action. So here's the real question: are you willing to live like this? Are you willing to be misunderstood, to be different, to take full responsibility, to say no when everyone else says yes, and to walk a path that has no guarantees, because that is the price, and very few people are willing to pay it. But those who don't just live, they experience life in a completely different way, with clarity, with purpose, with control, and most importantly, with freedom. So if something inside you is reacting right now, if something feels uncomfortable, or exciting, or even a little scary, that is a sign, because growth never feels safe. It feels uncertain and challenging, but that is exactly where everything begins to change. And maybe, just maybe, you are one of the few who can actually do it, but only if you decide to right now, not someday, not when you feel ready, because you will never feel fully ready. You act first and become later. That is how it works. So the question is simple: will you keep living like everyone else, or will you step into something rare? Because the choice is yours, and it always has been.